Welcome to Education 1.5, whereby we continue discussion on the Education Amendment Act. Nasi tukurukura nenyaya ya provision of sanitary wear mukati mezikoro. Kuti kurukura nenyaya iyi nasi ndina Councillor Dalitso Piri kubva Junior Council na Honorable Mr. Iramkwi Mshonga, Chairman we Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Primary and Secondary Education. Kuti paruri nyaya iyi Honorable mukatitsanangurira kuti zimbori zvechiko zvitirikutaura nezvechiko netichaura nezve provision of sanitary wear mukati mezvikoro.
I think chekutanga is to celebrate that after many years of people lobbying on this issue, finally in a piece of legislation, mumutemu wenyika, we now have that provision that says kuti tinofanira kuprovide sanitary wear. Zvichireva kuti takufanira kuti tipe zvinhu zvinoshandiswa nevanhu vechidzimai, in this case our young kids, abantwana vetu abancane nxa besesikolo, nxa bengena esikhathini kana vasvika nguva dzavo dzavanenge vachienda kwatinoti kumwedzi kana tiri kutaura pachivanhu, but during the time that they are having their periods. This has been a long conversation, years, if not 2 decades of conversations. So the first thing is to celebrate our government for having done so, but to also celebrate civic society that has continued to push, and to celebrate our young people because they also have really engaged on this discussion in an amazing way.
I was not in the Honorable. Do you come Councillor? Muna say kwa mdariro.
Well, Joe, Honorable Chilo, uhulumende mele ngeke abantwana xa bengena esikhathini. So then, with this whole issue of sanitary wear, I've discussed with my other honorable councillors, and they gave their inputs as well. How girls in schools face troubles in terms of sanitary wear, getting access to sanitary wear. We have situations where the general mindset of a girl is affected each time. Like every month, every single month in a certain week, some girls miss school because of the thought of, wait, have I spoiled myself, things like that. So then with the issue of the government helping out in terms of sanitary wear, it's something that's very important and should be considered.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Honorable, when is this coming into effect?
I think it is interesting that on the panel we've got a young man who is talking about sanitary wear.
Yeah.
And under normal circumstances, I would have said, no, why is he talking about it? But I think it shows the change, the movement that has happened. Patakatanga kuitaura satati kuikhuluma it was just the girls and the women that were talking about it. But I think what has happened beyond just the law and the provision is that we have now started engaging with the other gender. So as he becomes a father, he will not have to go through the problems that other fathers have had, where they have not been able to engage with it. That he is comfortable having this discussion itself, I think, is a beautiful sign of how the country has moved forward. Then back to your question. We are currently talking to the Minister of Education. They have indicated to us that there are certain provinces, like they are saying Bulawayo province, much north, much south, there had been an allocation that had been given to the various provinces for them to source sanitary wear. I'm hearing from civic society on the ground that they have not seen the sanitary wear. And this is a conversation we are going to be sitting with Minister of Health, because we do not want to celebrate something so much and then find that in terms of implementation, it's not there on the ground. Secondly, we still want to engage with the girls themselves, because sanitary wear is a broad issue. It includes tampons, it includes cotton wool, it includes, we now have latest sanitary pants, and we want for them to have a choice. It's another thing to have the sanitary wear, but it's another thing to then say, what kind of sanitary wear do I want? I know right now we are talking about difficult circumstances where any sanitary wear is good enough. But I think what we really want to do is that any girl should have the choice to what kind of sanitary wear they would want to use. So the long and short of it is we had an allocation of 200 million
from the
Treasury, which allocation should be used to access and to buy sanitary wear and to distribute it to our schools.
Okay. Honorable, is there a criteria now in terms of distribution of the 200 million that we received from Treasury?
What they did was to say, let's work per province. So they put up a tender for each province, and they then said, we'll start with the most vulnerable. So they will get to a province, for example, and they will look at 1 or 2 districts, and they will say, in Bulawayo, what are the 2 districts that are the most vulnerable? Vanouya muno Marare votarisa kuno kuona kuti ndekupi. For example, I know that Epworth is one of the areas yaka-identified as an area distribution. I think Patikambe these kind of conversations around basic education. We are also beginning to say issue of sanitary wear is part of the package in basic education.
Okay.
Because if the child does not have sanitary wear, they are unable to go to school. But because basic education nature is progressive, we say it is going to be progressively implemented. It means that we would have to, scale up. As resources come in, we start with the most vulnerable, but what we are trying to look, the ideal is to ensure that just like you want to do school feeding as an ideal, the sanitary wear should be an ideal. So that is the criteria as provided by the Ministry of Education. But like I said, it's one area that the Portfolio Committee on Education is going to be engaging, and we are going to be actually going out to the schools to investigate and to find out who is getting it and are they happy with what they are getting.
Mataura mima province akawana mari kuti atenge, but ndakasuka ku Mashonaland West province vakatotenga sanitary wear yavanayo vatomira kuti vaite distribution. Ndoya kwamuri councillor, munozionawo sei izvo kuti tinge tichidistributa masanitary wear mumaschools, muno prepare kuti zvinge zvichiita distribution inenge ichiitwa sei?
Well, first of all, as Harare City Junior Council, we started up a million pads campaign. So then we distributed 5,000 pads so far, of which would go to most vulnerable places, the less privileged rural areas. So then if we implement a situation or a system where we distribute pads in schools, I think we can reach more people that way. Because sometimes when you go to a community hall or a community center, not everyone attends. But we know that in schools there are more girls which will attend school in terms of lessons and stuff like that. So then we can distribute the pads. So I'm in total support of that.
Ndinotenda councillor, regaiti sangane muchirongwa chinotevera tataura isusu nenyaya yemasanitary pads yekuti zvakakodzera kuti zvinge zvichiiswa mukati mezvikoro zvichibatsira. Vataura councillor vakati zvinobatsira kuti mwanasikana ange ane confidence dzekuramba achiuya kuchikoro. Honorable Misi Yarimbe Mushonga vakataura ivo kuti hurumende yakatobudisa iyo 200 million kuti masanitary pads ange achitengwa. Tinotenda ngatisangane muchirongwa chinotevera. This is Education Wise 15, and we'll come back where we continue our discussions on the Education Amendment Act. And today we are discussing the issue of provision of sanitary wear in schools. And joining us in this discussion is Florence Mtaki from Shamari Yemanasikana. Florence, naga titangenewe kuti so kuona kwako unaona sei kwenye hii provision of sanitary wear in schools as provided for by the Education Amendment Act?
Chirongwa cheku distributa ma sanitary pads kuvanasikana vari muzvikoro tinochiona chiri chirongwa chakanaka pani nekuti chirongwa chiri kuzadzisa the objectives of girls meeting their education in school without missing class, without missing any days due to a shortage, due to lack of access to sanitary pads. Sekuziya kwatinoita masanitary pads anozadzisa hunhu hwemunhukadzi yatingati dignity muchirungu, nekuti nhau dzekutevera kunguva yemanhukadzi kana isina kuzadziswa nedignity iyoyo chinhu chinooneka chakadini chakashoreka kana kuti chinhu chinooneka chiri chinhu chinosekesa community in terms of our prevailing norms and taboos around issues of menstrual hygiene management and dignity. Asi zvoga chiri chirongwa chakanaka kudaro sekutaura kwaita colleague yangu pano honorable vachiti tiri kufarira nekupembera mutemo wakaparurwa mulegislation yeZimbabwe, asi isu tichiona nekushanda nemacommunities atiri kuita nezvikoro zvatiri kuita tichine kakunyunyuta kari matiri nekuti chirongwa chakaparurwa pabepa, asi kuti chizadziswe kwatiri kushandira tiri tichiona vana vezvikoro vari muzvikoro tiri kuona kuti hatisati chasvika kunzvimbo dzose.
Wataura nyaya yakanaka yekuti chakaparurwa pabepa asi hasati chazadziswa. Honorable, ndichiuya kwamuri, chinofanira kuzadziswa nehurumende chete here kana kuti masangano akazvimirira oga anogona kupindira panenge patadzwa?
Well, I think the first responsibility is with government, really. Just like we have said, when there is hunger, you don't say, let NGOs provide food. NGOs do come in to support, but fundamentally, the responsibility for providing food security is with government. Saka, I always want to run away and iyoyo yekutombopa vamwe vanhu nokuti kana chikafu chichinzi chinofanira kupiwa vanhu, isi tiri kutaura kuti nyaya yekuteera inyaya yekuti munhu haakwanisa haumuke mangwana wakuseni chikafu chitori nani nokuti unogona kuti handichadya ka1 nhasi. But kana kuri kuteera hakuna kuti unomeka decision yekuti aiwa ndichadya nhasi. Kana wamutongosvika nguva yekuteera unotongoteera. Kana ari mazuva 5 unoteera mazuva 5. If you are going to have to menstruate for 7 days, you're going to menstruate for 7 days. You have no choice. So we want to keep pushing and saying it is fundamentally a responsibility of government. We know that resources, we have limited resources, but just like we find resources for food, just like we find resources for petrol, we have not seen in a country since hakuna petrol. Inoshaipa, inoita shoma, and people go into queues, but there is always petrol. So we can't continue to use the excuse that we can't buy sanitary ware, we can't give every child sanitary ware because we don't have money. So NGOs will only come to supplement where they feel things, where I'm talking about choices and things like that. But really, fundamentally, this is why you find that even when this thing was debated in Parliament, initially the minister then wanted to say, no, but let's move it progressively. But the decision of the House was, we must. So that provision in legal terms is defined in peremptoral terms. It's a must. It has to be done. There is no choice. It was that appreciation that members of Parliament had at the debate of the Education Amendment Act that this is so critical that it can't be given as a may or a choice. For government. They have to provide.
Honorable, you spoke about choices. And I understand there are NGOs that are distributing sanitary pads in schools. Are there any standards that should be followed to say this is the standard that should be followed when you are providing sanitary pads or sanitary wear to schools?
It's a discussion that we had with the Minister of Education, and I'm hoping they've put it through. We actually agreed that any sanitary wear that will be given to our kids has first to go through the Standard Association of Zimbabwe, so that it meets the proper standards. Because just like we are careful about the drugs that we give to people, you do not want to willy-nilly just provide sanitary wear, particularly in circumstances where it's so difficult to access sanitary wear. Anybody can come with something, and if you are desperate, you can pick on anything that is coming up. So we have said the Ministry of Education should set up a system that says there is no distribution of sanitary wear unless that product has gone to the Standard Association of Zimbabwe and has been seen to meet the standards. For the other things which are new, which are products that are coming in new, they have to go through the medical association for approval. But we know that for most of the products that are coming in, sometimes they're sanitary cups or already they are being used outside, so they may not have to go through the medical association. But we still feel that for mass distribution, they have to go through the Standard Association of Zimbabwe.
Maybe coming to you, Florence. there is the issue of the washable sanitary pads that are being produced maybe in localities with the help of NGOs. How best can we make sure that they are standardized? Do you think the NGOs that are assisting would meet the requirements of the Standard Association of Zimbabwe, as the MP has just said?
To concur with what the Honorable has said, the newly introduced reusable sanitary pads do need to go through the processes of, assessing whether they meet the standards per the procedures of our health as well as the SAZ. But just to speak on the availability or the thinking around provision of reusable sanitary pads, for some organizations it actually came in as a gap filler in terms of the sustainability of the proposed project in terms of distributing disposable sanitary pads. Because a menstrual cycle occurs to each girl every other month. And if we are to distribute a packet per girl each month, in terms of financial feasibility, it might not be sustainable. But looking at alternatives that may meet the sustainability of support of menstrual dignity within school environments, other organizations have now thought around, having the thinking of providing reusable sanitary pads. And also others have also gone to a level of even teaching girls, training girls to actually make these pads within themselves so that they do not resort to other unhygienic methods during that period, but are also empowered with the knowledge in terms of coming up with these standard pads that are healthy for each girl to continue her cycle in a dignified manner.
This is Education 1.5, where today we are discussing about the issue of sanitary pads, and the Honourable MP has been clear to say it is a government obligation to provide these sanitary pads within schools. And we have agreed that there is need for us to follow standards so that these sanitary pads are standardized by the Standard Association of Zimbabwe. Let's meet in the next segment. Welcome to the last segment of our program, Education 1.5. Today, we are discussing about the provision of sanitary pads in schools. Honorable, in the last segment we spoke about the provision of sanitary pads in schools. Does this include private schools?
No, it doesn't. And let me take you back. One of the things that we've said is that it's not sanitary pads, it's sanitary water. Because, and like he rightly said, yes, the reusable ones are good for purposes of sustainability, but we also have now sustainable products also. We have sanitary cups, we also have sanitary pants. And I think what is important is to bring in the girls themselves so that they also can be part of even the tendering system. They need to say what is it that they think works for them. You will see that in most instances, one of the problems that some of us have with pads or with the reusable pads is that one has to have the panty to go with it. And in these circumstances, in certain instances, some of the kids don't even have pants.
True.
And under normal circumstances, if they are not going for their menstrual periods, they don't need to be putting on pants.
Yeah.
But so any product that you have has to be contextual. What are the circumstances that are available? So we really need to engage very, very seriously with the girls themselves so that they can indicate, what is it that they need at this particular point in time. Yeah. Of course, balancing with the issue of the sustainability issue. But if we go back to the issue that you were referring to in terms of private schools, certainly not exactly the same conversation that we had before. Social justice is about those that cannot afford. This is why even as we have started this, we have started with ensuring that we start with the most vulnerable and we go up. So even in circumstances where you have government schools, you are also beginning to say those government schools perhaps that are in your what was known to be your low density suburbs before.
Yes.
Yes, they will come into the scheme, but perhaps a bit later.
Okay.
So you start really with your low schools, where you have your resettlement schools, and as you go up, so that at the end of the day, you deal with where the need is best felt, and you escalate as you go up. Yeah.
Coming to you, Florence, Honorable earlier on made a correction to say it's not sanitary pads, but sanitary ware. But I just want to find out what else will be needed in schools, despite the sanitary ware. What else will be needed to work hand in hand with the provision of sanitary?
In terms of provisional sanitary facilities, would say schools would need to be adequately equipped with enough water for self-cleansing, infrastructure like adequate toilets with incinerators, so that girls will be able to dispose of their used items within a proper disposable means would also need to be met. Over and above that, we would also feel that in terms of these facilities as well, there would be need, given resources are available, there would be need to provide facilities that may provide what I can say, for lack of a better word, medical dispensaries for girls who then suffer from things like menstrual cramps. Some girls might actually need to sit down and talk to somebody who can actually give an ear to listen from a counselor's perspective as well as a medical counselor perspective. So some of those facilities are what our girls would need, given that there are available resources within schools, whether coming from government subsidies or the schools setting up such infrastructures within the funds that are within school budgets. But those are some of the facilities that we would say for menstrual dignity to be complete and allow a happy flow and a happy period for each girl. These are some of the facilities that we need to think around in terms of provision and making sure that they are available for every girl during their menstrual cycle.
Thank you so much. We are coming towards the end of our program. Maybe, Honorable, in wrapping up?
I think the beauty of this provision is that it provides an obligation for everybody around. The parents have to be engaged. It's not only this discussion on menstrual management should not only take place in school, it should take place at home. A girl should be comfortable to say to daddy when mom is not there, I am on my periods, I need help, I need support. So the reproductive health personnel that are going to be in schools are going to deal with the issues that she's talking about. Because let's not only look at menstrual health in the context of provision of sanitary ware. It's actually broader than that. It's all inclusive. It's about the girl understanding her reproductive rights. It's about her understanding when she goes on. And it's also about looking at her own traditional methods. She was talking about the dispensary for dealing with cramps. But I've also been talking to some of our older women within our culture. There are ways of having dealt with some of these menstrual problems. Let's talk to them. How is it that before Panadol came in, what is it? How did our mothers, our grandmothers deal with issues of menstrual cramp? So that in itself should be a conversation that is both at community level and at school level. But parents do have an obligation. Let's not continuously push everything to government. Government can only do so much. But we, as a family and as parents, need to make sure that issues of menstrual health are at the center of what we are dealing with at home.
Fantastic. Over to you, Florence.
Just to add a voice on the progressive transformation of our male masculinities around issues of menstrual hygiene. We had one male young councillor today who was speaking on issues to do with menstrual hygiene, which is something that is quite progressive and very encouraging to see such young men coming out speaking boldly around menstrual hygiene and management. So our call as civil society is to maybe call out to more men to come on board, engage the conversation, openly, and have such open talk and discussions around meeting the needs around menstrual hygiene and management. And yes, civil society organizations that are working towards menstrual dignity, our services are here. We're here to supplement, as Honorable has said, to complement what our government is already doing in terms of meeting the total needs of our girls, so that they have an enabling environment, whether in school or out of school, so that they develop in a proper way and in a dignified manner. So I give it back to you.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Honorable, for coming to the discussion. We have come to the end of our program, and we have discussed, we were discussing on issues to do with sanitary provisions in schools, and the panel here has made it clear to say that it's not only the obligation of the government, but we have to make sure that parents also play a role. And we want to thank you so much for coming to the conversation. This is Education 15. Let's continue the conversation. #EducationAct. Thank you.